Now, in your book, you've laid out something called the Opportunity Index, which helps you basically lay out what your resources are and invest them effectively.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. In the book, what we liked to do was open everything with an anecdote rather than getting right into the metrics. And very often they're anecdotes not about brands, but about people who have laid down a strategic foundation outside of the world of marketing. And the one for this one was Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh was the coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He walked into the San Francisco 49ers headquarters in 1979, and he had this sort of neatly combed hair, these pressed khakis, this red sweater. He did not look like a football coach. He looked like a professor. Like he just needed a bent billiard pipe to round out his entire look. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He didn't give rah-rah speeches. Back then, you got to realize, like, football was played with one simple approach. Big, strong men blocking against big, strong men with one big, strong running back, right? The Super Bowl trophy is called the Lombardi Trophy because he created that strategic underpinning. Bill had this one idea. Why don't we put the ball where the other team isn't? So he set it up to look just like every other team. Bunch of big, strong guys blocking against other big, strong guys. Running back comes in, goes to get the ball, but at the last minute, the quarterback took the ball out. And then he threw it into what's called the flats. It's an area of the field that nobody was using. The field is 53 yards wide. He talks about this over and over again, which was nobody had played with this. They all thought about the 100 yards of depth, not the 53 yards of width. And he would throw the ball about 6 yards off the line of scrimmage. A guy named Jerry Rice would catch the ball. And then 70% of his yards he would get just by running with the ball because nobody was there. And people are like, oh, you had Jerry Rice, he's the greatest receiver. You had Joe Montana, he was the greatest quarterback. No, he started this stuff, which is called the West Coast offense. He started this stuff in a very non-West Coast town of Cincinnati, where he had a terrible quarterback. He literally had a weak-armed quarterback, which is what it was. He couldn't throw it down the field. He had to throw it to the flats, and he had a bunch of other mediocre players, and he went from terrible all the way to the playoffs. When he finally got decent players, he won the Super Bowl. He won the Super Bowl again. They won like 5 Super Bowls. He's in the Hall of Fame. He changed football forever. The reason this anecdote is important, and a long-winded way of answering your question, is this is what brands need to do. They need to put the ball where the other team isn't. Brands are not going to win a contest. Maybe if you're Coke and Pepsi, maybe if you're Budweiser, maybe if you're AT&T, you can get by on might, right? Which is just huge budgets and, maybe a great agency. Other brands need to figure out something else. You're just not going to win that contest. So putting the ball where the other team isn't is about finding an opportunity that's unmet, providing value to consumers, something that people really want, so they'll engage with it. They'll share it with others. They'll become not just customers, but evangelists. So what we realized is you need a mathematical model, right? There's too many touch points. There's dozens of touch points. I mean, Facebook isn't just Facebook. There's all different ways of activating in Facebook. And then you got Snapchat, and you got Twitter, and you got your website, you got videos, you got user-generated content. It goes on and on and on. When we conduct research, we find that for many of our brands, they've got upwards of about 60 different touch points between themselves and the audience. And there's there's maps out there, as people have created these things, thousands of different places that you can activate. So how do you figure it out? So first of all, you got to figure out how important are these ways of interacting with a customer? And then you have to figure out how satisfied are people with the way you're interacting at these places that may be very important. That's what's typically called a gap analysis. But putting the ball where the other team isn't, you need to use a multiplier, which is how differentiated is it, right? Being really good at something that everybody else is doing, like TV ads, isn't necessarily going to differentiate you. That becomes the numerator to the equation. Then you got to figure out how expensive is all this stuff. Because if it's a great idea and you can't afford it, that doesn't work. If it's a really good idea and it's dirt cheap, holy smokes, let's run that to the front of the list. So the denominator is how much does it cost to invest in this activation. And that's not just what's going out of house to paid media, your agencies, it's all your hours and time and everything internally. Ultimately, this creates this opportunity index. It helps companies mathematically understand when and where they should activate. Now, it's not that simple, right? Because let's say something is really important doesn't mean you're even doing anything there. So you can't even measure satisfaction, right? There's no real way to quantify differentiation. So the point is, it still comes down to this basic thing, which is you need an amazing team. You can't just rely upon data. You have to have insights and strategic and tactical thinking, because there's a lot of judgment calls that go into this. And this is what creates passion brands. If it was as simple as like, let's just throw it into that Google spreadsheet, boop, boop, opportunity index, everyone would do it. You need great strategic thinkers.